Welcome to Technado.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to another episode of Technado. That's right, you're hearing my voice, Don Pizzette, the host of Technado, which means Sophie's not with us this week, and that means our quality is going to be...
you need to qualify
that. She's not dead, she's just not here.
She's just not here.
And the quality of this podcast is going to go off the rails.
Yeah. See, we're not as good as her at this, so the comedy quality will probably go pretty high unintentionally. So, hi, I'm Daniel Lowry.
I think it's easy sometimes for us to think of like, well, we focus so much on the tech news and stuff and not realize exactly how much Sophie does to make the show happen.
Thing along. And here's her replacement.
So we did have to line up a replacement. We've got Ronnie Wong with us.
Yep,
that's enough
that's
out of
pretty
you,
much
Ronnie.
it. Yeah. That's pretty much it. You know, it's like, hey, anybody? Oh, Ronnie answered, so I'm back.
We're like, oh, it's Ronnie.
Yeah, why not? Barely.
Yeah,
barely.
Yeah.
Let's not overqualify.
Yeah, he passed the breath test.
Yeah.
Honestly, our bar for a guest host is this. We say, all right, who can we find that's roughly the height of Sophie so we don't have to adjust microphones?
Yeah,
there you go.
That's about where it rolls.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Appreciate it. Well, Ronnie has been a guest on the show multiple times. He's one of our coworkers over at our day job and phenomenal technical instructor and brings a wealth of knowledge.
Speaking of day job.
Oh,
Day
yeah.
job.
Speaking of day job, we should mention the fact that this podcast is sponsored by the good folks over at ACI Learning who bring to us things like IT Pro TV, where Daniel, Ronnie, and I create various training content in the IT space, as well as webinars and other fun goodies that are out there. So if you ever go to technado.com and you're interested in learning more about technology, look to the top right of the page. You'll see a button up there that says something.
Try
for free. That's the wrong page.
There we go. Sponsored by IT Pro. There is no try.
Yeah.
Only do.
No,
We're doing
only
not.
Wow.
So there's sponsored by IT Pro. You can check that out and sign up. You can use promo code Technado30 for 30% off the lifetime of your account. Be sure to take advantage of that and learn stuff.
I feel like with our powers combined, we make a very inadequate host.
That's right. I think we'll be able to AI this one at some point. And,
Get to work on that, would you?
There we go. All right. Well, with that out of the way, why don't we dive into our articles? We're going to jump into our tech news segment here in the beginning, like we always do. We'll lead with Apple. Apple had a big announcement this week, or at least that's what they want you to believe. This one comes to you.
Way to bury the lead there, Don.
They hyped it up enough.
They certainly did. This one comes to you from the folks over at ZDNet. Apple's M3, M3 Pro, and M3 Max chipsets, everything you need to know except why their marketing people haven't been fired for their stupid naming convention. Apple had their October event. They called it Spooky Fast.
Spooky Fast.
Spooky Fast. I didn't know there was such a thing as, like, I guess Scary Fast maybe is what they were going for, but they ended up going with Spooky.
They went with Spooky.
That was dumb.
Okay.
Was Scary Fast trademarked? Was that
it
the problem?
actually says Scary Fast.
Am I wrong?
Yes.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yes.
This is why we have Ronnie here. Now you guys get real news.
The fact checker over here.
I didn't fact check. I just looked at the article.
He's trying to make Don look bad on
Madness.
TV.
All
You're never
right.
coming back, Don.
Well, I would like to refute this. Because, how would you guys define scary fast? Like, Daniel, let's say you had a car that could go 100 miles per hour.
Okay.
Right? Now, I think most cars today can go 100 miles per hour.
Yes, they can.
So if I told you, Daniel, here's a new car and it's scary fast, like what would it take? What level of improvement would you need to get to the scary fast level? Let's quantify this.
That's a weird analogy because, like you say, most cars will go 100 miles an hour. It's how fast they can get to 100 miles an hour that makes them fast or not fast.
All right, you know more about cars than I do.
Yeah. So, but yes, I see where you're going with this idea. Like, how much more? Okay, so if 100, that's a good number too because then it's like 100%.
Easy math.
How can I get what past 100% would make me go, dang, that's fast? I'm gonna go with probably at least another quarter, so at least 25%.
Okay, just 25%.
Yeah, just 25%. Well, that's a 1/4 improvement.
Ronnie, are you in that camp? What do you think?
So I think about it in terms of like what Daniel's saying here about how fast you can get to that point. So I've been in a vehicle on this road in front of the office.
Sounds like
here
I regret my analogy.
Where we ended up taking a right turn at the stoplight, and we were at 86 miles per hour for the next stoplight. Which, if you
That's
think
fast.
about that is what scared
Yes.
scared me
The
to no end.
poo-poo
Yeah,
And
out of
and
you.
did you go back in time?
I thought we did.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
88 miles.
Yeah, that's
isn't it?
88
miles an hour.
But I
Almost.
mean,
It's
it was
2 miles an hour
86
away.
miles per hour when we kind of like had to brake, and I was like, and when we hit the brakes, it was literally me being thrown forward. So that is what I think about scary is how fast
All right.
it takes to get there.
Well,
Yeah.
getting to what Apple presented, they did release their M3 processors. Now, their release cadence has been ridiculous on this stuff,
Yeah,
right?
super
Because
fast.
they created their entire own CPU. That was like an engineering marvel right there. The fact that they were able to create their own silicon and compete against Intel with the M1 processor, right?
Yep.
So I was really impressed by
Yeah.
that.
Oh, they didn't even compete. They kicked their pants out, right?
They really did, yeah.
Just
it's
like
a really amazing processor
from the first generation.
Yeah.
And then a year later, the M2.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right. Well, hey, to do a major iteration like that's significant. I was expecting, the normal BS naming convention, so the M1S or whatever.
Yeah.
But no, we just got
M1 Snow Lion.
So then the M3 comes out this year. I mean, this is 3 years in a row. This is some aggressive architecture. And they were stating that it was like 50 to 60% faster than the previous.
That's by Grapthar's hammer, Don.
Yeah, a savings.
That is fast.
So I was impressed, but then I started digging into it. And dude, this is like super misleading.
Mhm.
I think
This is some marketing bullcrap, isn't it?
it really is.
Yeah.
So the neural engine that's inside of it. So when you're performing AI or machine learning type tasks or whatever, that is seeing up to a 60% performance improvement over previous ones. But when you get to the general CPU, so what you're actually using the bulk of time, not on a server, but on a desktop, where you're using the bulk of the time,
It's not that.
nowhere near that.
Yeah.
It's a 15% improvement over the M2 and only a 30% improvement over the M1. To me, like that's not even enough to upgrade. Like,
Right.
is a 30% boost enough to purchase new hardware?
No, absolutely not. I think it's fine that they continue to push their M chips into faster, better, stronger. That's good. They should be doing that. But if they're trying to get people to say, "Oh, I gotta upgrade this thing," it better have more than just like you say, maybe a 30%, because those are just benchmarks, right? You're never going to be at that consistent. Oh, I'm always 30% more.
Yeah.
Then right, it's just not how it works out. Just when you do a benchmark test, I can hit that and you can't. Whoop-de-doo. In my everyday tasks, am I going to see like that kind of performance enhancement? Probably not. Unless you're in a very specific niche field where you're doing like 4K video rendering or whatever, then those percentages start to help you out in the long run. But so it's fine that if you're trying to market to me who already has, like I have an M2, or if I had an M1 and a Mac Pro, wow, you're not coming after me. You're coming after new people who are like, man, this Intel chip just ain't kicking the fire hot enough.
Yeah.
I need something better, stronger, faster. And then, I'm going to go with that new M3. That's the market they should be going after.
You know who I blame for this? I blame Intel. And I know it's a weird thing to say because they're not involved in it, but really hyper-threading is what started this whole snowball rolling downhill, where you had like a 2-core processor, and then when they had hyper-threading, they said, "Oh, you've got 4 cores."
Yeah,
but you didn't. Like it was very rare that you could utilize all 4 at a high level. It was the hyper-threading cores would work sometimes, and Apple is still continuing that. So like they released a diagram of the M3 Pro and how that architecture laid out, and there's a 18-core next generation architecture part that's really GPU focused. And then you've got the 12-core CPU itself, but it's 6 what they call performance cores. And for those of you listening, I'm doing air quotes, performance cores, and then another 6 efficiency cores that don't even run at the same megahertz as the other one. So it's like this whole new world where you can't trust any of the numbers.
Yeah, the speed is deceptive, right? So I've never noticed, even when I went to a faster computer, really never noticed speed increases. Where I tended to notice most speed increases when I went to an older computer after using, it's the weirdest thing. It's like, okay, that M3 might seem fast when I work, or it's about the same. But then when I go to a really old computer, or actually somebody else's computer, at that point, it's just like, why is this not actually working the way that I was working?
Yeah.
And so I think that with computer speed, I think that that's when we see the difference, is not so much like immediate in terms of like benchmarks and different speeds is when we use it and then we go and use what we already had. And then we're like, oh yeah, this is actually a lot faster. I just don't notice it.
So Don, I think we've had this discussion like, what, 20 years ago?
Yeah.
I think when, I think it was Vista, when Vista came out, somewhere around there, I was like, wow, you know, they've got all these new improvements and everything, but it seems to be because of all the Aero and stuff that they added on at the time, that our laptops are going to struggle with this.
Yeah, and they did.
Right? And so now you got to go buy new hardware. So it always seemed like that the hardware and software were playing this game of, well, now somebody's got to upgrade because of something I did. Okay, cool. Now I got this latest and greatest piece of hardware and it can run these things. It's like buying a Ferrari, right? Going back to our car analogy here. I bought a Ferrari. Oh man, is it fast? And it's always going to be fast. But then Ferrari goes, oh yeah, Daniel, now you got to also hook up this trailer. What's on it? Like 6,000 pounds of bricks. But why? Because, man, it looks good. I know it looks good, but it's really heavy. And now that, 600 horsepower I have is great, but it doesn't feel like it anymore, right?
Yeah.
Because now you loaded me down, and that seems to ends up happening. And that's why we eventually, I can't upgrade my hardware anymore. I have to get a new latest and greatest that can support the newest features on these things. And then they go, hey, new hardware's out. Let's give it more features. And they just continue to do this. Make it strip line, make the operating system run like a gazelle. That's what I want.
Yeah. Some people will resist. I remember like when Windows 2000 came out and stuff, people were like, well, Windows 98 runs faster. I don't want to go to 2000.
Right.
And Windows XP, people didn't want to go to Vista because XP ran faster. And sure enough, you installed Vista and XP on the same system.
Oh, yeah. XP smoked it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. But there was always something that moved you forward, right? So 64-bit processors for a while, like, oh, well, Windows XP 64-bit sucks. Yeah. And so now I've got to move up to this other OS that's going to be slower. And, as we got more advanced chipsets, USB-C, and Thunderbolt and all that, they keep pushing you into these newer OSs. And they're bloated like crazy, and it leads to these slowdowns. And a lot of the security mitigations we have today, which you want to have,
right?
But they really impact the performance on your systems.
Yeah, if they could ever get that dance down to a science, and at least that's one of the things I like about the Linux world a lot is that they're constantly trying to offer you, hey, repurpose those old laptops you got sitting around. We've got a very stripped down, light, fast, everything you need. Not the kitchen sink, though. Yeah. And it gives you the ability to have a decent experience with older hardware using a Linux operating system. So I wish that we saw that with Windows. I wish that we saw that with Mac. Not that I typically have a bad experience as far as performance goes when it comes to my Mac operating systems. I just don't like them that much.
Yeah. All right, well, let's shift gears and move over to Microsoft. Not to be outdone. Well, I'd say Microsoft was outdone.
Completely outclassed.
Yep. Microsoft this week, we don't have an article for this one, but they did release into the wild the 23H2 update. So if you've been waiting on that one, but it's like such a minor thing that most people don't care about it. But they did do something interesting. A month or two ago, we reported on how Microsoft was going to be adding support for RAR archives or RAR archives natively in Windows. We talked about it on the podcast because there were several vulnerabilities that came out for the WinRAR utility, and here was a chance to get away from that utility and just use something native in your OS.
Now they can have their own vulnerabilities.
Yeah. There we go. There we go. Now that rolled out, so even my home computer has that support now, and I'm not in any special insider ring or anything like that. But Microsoft has run with it and said, "Wait a minute, people like archives. This is news to us. It's shocking." And so they are now rolling out support for even more archive formats, including 7-zip. And I appreciate this because I believe I mentioned this a few months ago. I actually paid for a license of WinRAR because I'm one person who did that apparently. But 7-zip is probably the most popular open one that you can just go and download for free.
Listen, when you purchased that license, Don, that has kept them afloat.
That's it. It's me.
It was that one license.
So, 7-zip, I never really knew if I could trust that software or not. You don't know a whole lot about what goes on behind the scenes with them, and you are installing more software that's integrated into your shell, so there's some risk there. But Microsoft is adding support for 7-zip, numerous forms of tar, gzip, xzip, bzip, a lot of the
nice.
native Linux archive formats that it's getting support for, even combinations like tar gzip and tar xzip. So they're implementing support for that. It's in beta right now, so it's in the early release versions, but it'll be moving into production soon. And at that point, if you run Windows, you really don't have a need for a third-party archiver anymore.
So technically, they kind of have supported it for a little bit, right? Because you have Windows Subsystem for Linux.
Yeah.
And I typically have WSL installed like out of the gate.
Right.
And are they doing that now? Like, is there already one kind of baked in when you get like a fresh Windows 11 install? Is that happening at this point?
No,
and
it's because of like Windows 11 Home, where you don't have some of that.
They should, because there's no reason not to. Right?
Yeah.
Just have one, just like Ubuntu or what's that Windows Boatman or whatever the heck it is that or something.
Oh, Mariner.
Mariner.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah, just throw that on there and just go, oh, Mariner's on here, and then look, I can tar this and I can GZ that.
Yeah, but native binaries always run faster, and my guess for why they're not doing it that way, at least in this case, is I don't know if you guys have experimented with it. I use Windows Subsystem for Linux a lot.
Yeah.
It's disk IO sucks.
Yeah. Ah, gotcha.
So anytime you perform a disk operation, whatever abstraction layer they do there sucks.
And bottlenecks it pretty hard.
Yep. WSL 1 and 2, both of them, just poor disk IO performance.
Okay.
So because this is a file operation, that might be a part of it, but also it's integrated into the Windows Explorer, into the file manager.
That's totally cool that's there. Not that they're saying, hey, you know what? Let's just have Windows have a bite of this apple and welcome to the club, because like. Does Mac support those? They do, don't they?
Yeah. Macs are really flaky when it comes to archives. So a lot of times it'll support opening an archive, but not creating that archive.
Interesting. That's a very odd scenario.
And some of them it gets really unhappy with. Like I don't think it has XZip support at all. So the XZ files, which aren't that popular, so not that big of a deal. But Apple's pretty picky, because remember, for a long time they had their own archive format that they wanted everybody to use. There were two of them. There was the DMG, their disk image archive format, and there was another one that was like LBA or something like that. It had an LZH.
I
can't remember. But there's another one that Apple just loved, and if you had a Mac
OS,
they wanted to
kill it with fire. And Linux is going on here.
Is what you say is you run on your Mac. Yeah.
I think it's still kind of funny when you go down to the comments. It's finally somebody says, hey, hopefully one day then they'll also end up supporting EXT4, XFS, and BTRFS as well.
Didn't BTRFS get killed or whatever? Is that
no, that was RiserFS.
RiserFS, that's what it was.
Yeah, BTRFS still very active.
Still kicking. Yeah,
that's a bigger ask.
Yeah,
right
that's
now
a bigger ask.
Now you're asking for file system support.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't seem like it doesn't matter whatever Windows tries to do, right?
Yeah.
Hey, we're offering better support. Someone comes along and goes, well, but now this is what we really need. we didn't really need that. What we really needed was this.
It would be interesting to see because Windows has Mariner, and they have obviously I would love to see some sort of like cross pollination, some hybrid operating system where it is kind of a Linuxy Windows. They could really. Because how long in the Linux community have we talked about, man, when is Linux going to have that right desktop OS that's really going to help it kick into the market? Man, I mean, if anybody's poised to do that at this point, it would be Windows.
Did you ever hear, either of you, Singularity OS?
Yes. Yeah. I remember hearing the name. Remind me of what's
Microsoft Skunkworks project.
Okay.
So internal developers said, we've got this NTOS kernel that we've been running since the NT days, and it's still being used today. You fast forward all the way to Windows 11, like it's still that kernel. And obviously, it's been maintained and upgraded and so on. But they looked at it and they said, there were design choices that were made back in the day that didn't account for what we have available. And, networking, while important, wasn't core to the system in the beginning. Now it is. Why don't we start over? Why don't we start over with a brand new kernel, and we take all the things that we learned from the Unix world and BSD and all those other ones and incorporate that into this new kernel for Windows, and they called it Singularity.
Okay.
And the way that it was designed was that it was incredibly secure. So apps were fully isolated. No one app could crash and affect another one. It was memory safe. It had all sorts of bells and whistles to it. And ultimately it got killed. And the reasoning is, Microsoft has really made their money on backwards compatibility. And with Singularity, you had to start over. And they just weren't willing to do that. Now, companies like Apple have shown that you can do that. You can start over, and customers will grumble, but
they'll do it.
Right.
Sometimes.
If you just push them past the grumble phase, it eventually becomes their reality.
Yep.
And they just accept it and go, I guess it's how life is now.
But then there's other companies like Palm that have shown you that you can try it and then lose all your customers who go out of business. So, bit of a crapshoot.
Who's Palm?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I've heard of Microsoft. I feel like they may be a little more robust in their ability to weather a storm than Palm.
Are
you talking Palm, P-A-L-M or P-O-M?
Yeah, P-A-L-M.
Palm
OS.
I know Palm. Okay.
I wasn't a big fan of Palm devices. So I had one at one point, a little PDA. But if you think about that company, at the time, they basically cornered the market of mobile PDAs. And they could have been the iPhone. They could have been revolutionary. Same thing about BlackBerry.
But then the iPhone came out. And they were like, damn it.
But they tried to pivot and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. So anyhow, we'll see. And I think you're right, Ronnie. If Microsoft tomorrow released EXT4, XFS, and BTRFS,
there'll be something.
Somebody would be like, what? No ZFS? Sucks.
There's boycotts in front of Microsoft. Cancel Microsoft. They're uninclusive.
You can't think of another, operating system, right? Like, they bent over backwards to go, let's do this WSL, right?
Yeah.
Get that in there. Now, okay, we'll add these zip archives in. And then somebody's like, oh, no, it's not really. In other words, they want it to be Linux. That's what they really want.
What's your favorite operating systems right now?
Oh, me?
Yeah, anybody, both of you.
Right now, it's because I've been working with the Mac. I'm going to say the Mac OS.
You like a Mac OS the best?
I do.
Don?
I mean, my favorite operating system has always been OS 2. Like, I just enjoy OS 2. But I don't run that on any Mac today.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a fair answer. But I've been doing a lot of work in Ubuntu.
Yeah.
And so I hate to call it my favorite because I trashed on Ubuntu for a
Fedora,
long time.
I think is what you.
But right now, and I do have to time bound this because they're about to screw it up. but right now, like 22.04 is just a really stable,
solid,
flexible Linux release. I use the hell out of it.
It runs on just about everything, man.
It does.
That thing is, I might have to agree with you. I was actually going to say Windows right now because it has become very versatile.
Yeah.
Right? They're doing a lot with that operating system. And a lot of the pain points that I was having with Windows before have started to kind of be shaved down. But you're right, man. Like Ubuntu is really killing it with their support. I mean, you can throw it on phones, you can throw it on tablets,
Raspberry Pi.
It'll flip and run, and it runs great.
Yeah.
So you might have a point there.
They are going to totally bork it
Give them
in April.
Yeah,
so.
That's how we know them, right?
It's bound to happen.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the world of hardware. And I think it was just last week in the podcast where I mentioned how crazy it is that vendors like Apple and Microsoft and so on would have separate desktop operating systems from their tablet operating systems, right? I was talking about Google's Chromebooks versus their Android tablets and Apple's Mac OS versus their iPad OS. Well, in the Windows world, Microsoft has tried to bridge that gap before and failed. That was what we talked about. But they're not giving up. They're still trying. And we got some news out of Qualcomm this week.
Yeah.
Qualcomm has announced some new Snapdragon X Elite processors. Now, normally when you look at Qualcomm processors, they're ARM processors that are designed to be energy efficient, right? So it'll run on a cell phone for as long as possible, which usually means low powered, right? Not a lot of energy consumption and not a lot of megahertz, not a lot of CPU power coming out of that thing for getting work done. The Snapdragon X Elite eschews some of that and says, all right, we're going to bring you the power. We're going to bring you speed. We're going to try and focus on creating.
What was the Nintendo tagline? Now you're playing with power. Right? Remember that?
And then they give you a power glove. That's
awesome. Which is basically like the proto Wii.
Yeah.
Right?
If you think about it.
It uses the same technology.
Right.
Interesting. Fun little fact there for you retro
Technology
gamers.
Strap a Wii controller to your arm.
Plus, it looked bitchin'. Right? Like it was futuristic as hell.
They marketed
it was
that like
very
crazy.
cool. Yeah.
You ever see the movie The Wizard?
Of course. You kidding me? Don't insult me, sir. I think I watched it like 6 months ago.
Oh, really?
Easily, yeah. It was
And Fred Savage's
Fred
performance
Savage.
holds up.
And Nikki Cox, absolutely. Again, the guy is an underrated actor. He deserves
Timeless
3 Oscars
treasure.
easily. 14 Emmys. He's
you
probably
see,
got it in here too, actually.
The edit they did of Deadpool 2 when they released it as a Deadpool Christmas?
No, I did not see this.
All right, so we're all going off.
Yeah, it's what we do.
This is not brought to you by the folks at Ars Technica. So my oldest son, when Deadpool came out, he loves Deadpool. He wanted to watch the movie, but I had to draw a
that's
line.
not gonna happen.
Not
Yeah,
an okay kid movie. And then he started getting older, and Deadpool 2 came out, and I'm like, nope, still not old enough. Well, then they re-released Deadpool 2 for a limited time in theaters as a PG-13 edit.
Really?
They had to edit out like 20 minutes of footage.
Yeah. That's all?
So then you got to backfill the 20 minutes.
Right.
And so they added a whole storyline about how Deadpool kidnapped Fred Savage.
No, he did not.
And strapped him into a bed and forced him to reenact Princess Bride. He's like reading the story to Fred Savage. And
oh my goodness.
It's freaking hilarious.
Oh, okay. So is this on your Plex? Because I'm watching this.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know what I'm doing this afternoon. Not work.
So, and so my son got to watch that. And he's old enough now where he can watch the real Deadpools, but he got to watch it, and so that was what he thought of Deadpool 2 for a long time, was that had Fred Savage in it.
That is funny.
Yeah. It is
yeah, I'm totally watching this.
All right. So getting back to Qualcomm and Snapdragon and all that crap.
You were making a point. I
Stuff
don't remember what it was.
and things and stuff, Don.
So a lot of people were beginning to wonder, Apple switched back, they left Intel and they moved over to their own internal ARM processors. And their reasoning was Intel's not keeping up. And Intel is struggling. Their CEO has said that on multiple occasions. They're, third CEO in 5 years or something. So they're working to improve, but they haven't quite gotten there yet. So people have been thinking, is Microsoft going to try and make that pivot? They released the Surface, what was it called? The Surface X, which was an ARM-based Surface, which meant it couldn't really run anything. They ran Windows and Office, and that's about it, and it sucked. So Qualcomm now making a push to release a high-speed, like desktop-capable ARM processor. People are looking at this and saying, wait a minute, maybe 2024 is going to be the year this happens.
Well, I can't wait. I love pure capitalist here, my friend. Not the crony capitalist kind.
The good.
The going where it says the competition does nothing but benefit the consumer, right? Because the more they come out with better processors, we're already seeing Apple coming out with better processors. We are getting ready to see another leap. And I'm sure that it'll be within the next 10 years, we're going to see some insane, awesome processors that are going to make our experiences that much better. We're going to be able to run new and exciting things. Probably doing like 3D and things of that nature will become so easy for the average Joe out there and Jane that it's just a part of our world at that point. I as we know a bit, I'm into retro gaming. It's so funny to me that there are things like the Super Nintendo, right? To emulate some of the games on the Super Nintendo is not an easy task for modern processors.
Oh, because of the proprietary hardware they had, right?
Yeah. So for them to be able to pull that off and do that can get difficult. You think of games like Yoshi's Island, right? So Yoshi's Island has had a very, they had their own proprietary chip in there that was specific for running and rendering those graphics. So to be able to, it really kind of pushes the CPU to be able to do that, even in a modern device. Right. So I'm excited to see these because I want on my mobile device these new Snapdragons, like to be able to kill, Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 games with ease. And I think it's going to be the next gens are going to give me that.
So not the point you were trying to make, but Super Mario World.
Yes.
I love that game.
Great
Played
game.
the heck out of it. Really enjoyed it, right? Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island.
Yoshi's Island.
hated it.
Really?
How are you going to make a game where you have to listen to a baby crying?
That is
half
annoying.
The time?
I cannot. But the gameplay on that is very entertaining.
If they released a version that like somehow muted the baby crying, I might play
Amen, brother. Because that junk gets annoying. Or you just get really good at not losing the baby because he only cries when he gets bumped off a Yoshi. So get better at the game, Don.
Yeah, maybe that's it. All right, well, just like with Apple, we have to take these performance claims with a grain of salt, but Qualcomm is claiming that their new Snapdragon X Elite processor will outperform a 13th generation i7 by 2x. So twice as fast. That's a significant improvement. That's a reason to upgrade.
Yeah, 2x.
If they can deliver on it. Now,
yeah, big deal.
What sank the Surface X before was that, you have all these people that have written software, like when you go into your Steam library or whatever, where it's x86 software or x64, it's designed for that architecture. Those developers have to come back and recompile as an ARM chipset. And
which, by the way, is not an easy task.
Yeah.
That's a real pain in the day.
And I said earlier, Microsoft made their money on backwards compatibility. You lose that when you change architectures, or you have to emulate it, which means it's slower. So we go back to that argument. So it's tough. It'll be a big feat if they manage to make this transition next year, but it might happen.
Well, I look forward to it. It's funny. I was thinking about how you were surprised when I said 25%. I thought was a significant increase, but you didn't say significant enough that you would upgrade, right? So, yeah, well, I think 25% is a good jump. It is not enough for me to upgrade. You start talking 50 and above, then, all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm going to get twice the performance or not twice, but 1.5 more performance. Then, yes, I'm starting to think about maybe it's worth it to sell this and get that.
Sweet.
At that point, so go Snapdragon, by the way. Those processors are awesome.
Yeah, they've been in phones for years and years and years, so it's tried and true technology.
Sure.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a good spot for us to stop and take a break. That's going to wrap up our meandering hardware segment, our tech news segment. But don't go anywhere, because after the break, we're going to get back with our cybersecurity news. And let me tell you, there's some crazy stuff going on this week, and you will not want to miss it. So stay tuned. We'll be back after this.
Tired of trying to schedule your team's time around in-person learning? Isn't it a bummer to spend thousands of dollars on travel for professional development? What if we said you can save money and time and still provide your team with the best training possible? The answer to your woes is live online training from ACI Learning. With live online training, we provide our top in-person courses in private, online, instructor-led formats. You get to provide professional development in a manner that fits today's expectations. Entertaining, convenient, and effective. Our exam-aligned courses inspire the full potential of your team. Visit virtual instructor-led training at ACI Learning for more info.
Welcome back, everybody, to the second darker, scarier half of the Technado podcast. We're going to dive into our cybersecurity news. And before we do that, just a couple of messages here for you. I want to remind everybody, this podcast is brought to you by the folks at ACI Learning. If you want to learn more about IT, maybe start a career, get into certifications, or just see more of us acting, professional as opposed to this stuff that we do.
It's kind of like this, except you learn things.
Yeah.
That you want to learn. That's
really.
specific.
Yeah,
You'll probably learn things here as
a
well.
little more
but you might
guided.
not have wanted
A little
to
more
learn.
guided at that point.
Yeah. So, be sure to check that out. You can go to the website at itpro.tv or just go over to acilearning.com. If you sign up for subscription, be sure to use promo code Technado30 for 30% off your account. And you know what? If you don't want to do that, that's fine. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But if you're watching this on YouTube, you could do us a favor and subscribe. What is it? Like or subscribe?
Likes are better.
Subscribe.
Yeah, likes are better than subscribes.
Likes.
But definitely subscribe just because we're trying to get as much subscribed as we can.
And if you see an icon that looks like a bell or a heart or a star or a pentagram, click on it.
A pentagram?
I think somehow,
Then you'll know when to avoid us.
It's like, follow, subscribe, worship. There's all these different
it's
options.
really weird.
Whatever.
It's gotten strange lately.
Yeah.
Let's
So,
Baphomet on my.
Whichever option you feel appropriate and does not conflict with your religious beliefs or lack thereof. All right. Let's dive into cybersecurity. The first article is going to come to us from the folks over at Dark Reading, which is always a great source of information. Now, I almost passed over this because I swore this was just like dark reading will sometimes take an old tech story, just dive deeper into it. Sometimes like way deeper than anybody has a business in going. But this time it was just confusing because it's an all new whammy. So let me get to it here. Critical SolarWinds RCE bugs enable unauthorized network takeover. That sounds pretty bad, and it also sounds like an exact repeat of 3 years ago.
Yep.
Daniel, what is going on here?
So, as they always do, software is what software is, and it does what it does. And every now and then, some researchers out there will go, "Hey, what if? Oh yeah, that's bad. We should probably let people know about this." And they do. They'll find security issues within software, and then they will tell the software vendor, "Hey, I found these security issues." It's called responsible disclosure. Or maybe the vendor themselves has their own security team working and doing research. I think of things like Cisco, Talos, and whatnot, where they are constantly trying to find their own security bugs, and in others as well. Well, guess what? It has been Christmas and their birthday all rolled into one because, right, we had, what was it, 8? I think 8 CVEs.
Yeah.
Dropped in the lap of a good old-fashioned SolarWinds. Now, like Don said, a few years ago, you might remember, around 2020-ish, SolarWinds made the news because their software is used by Don. We've used it.
Yep.
Like everybody uses SolarWinds. It is very popular because it does a really good job at what it does, which is monitoring and reporting and all the things that it can do to keep a network administrator or a systems administrator or even a security admin's eye on the prize. Like, what's going on here? What's going on there? Alert me on this kind of stuff. It's just the graphics are great. Everything works really well. But because it works so well, everybody uses it. Right? Everybody loves it. Right? It is a thing. Everybody, including the United States government. And when there is a critical vulnerability that gets disclosed of the unauthorized or unauthenticated kind, right? Which means I don't have to log in, I don't have to do anything. If I have access to that system in any remote way, then I can exploit it. And if that exploitation leads to something like, I don't know, off the top of my head, we'll go with remote code execution.
Yeah.
Or, remote commands. This is when the sky starts falling and there's charred bodies in the streets. It's the worst case scenario you can think of. This is what we are looking at today. And then they lather, rinse, repeat. Now, they do have, patches for this. Mm-hmm. So if you have the ARM, which I can't remember what ARM stands for.
Access Rights Manager.
Thank you, sir. The Access, which is an extremely popular tool when it comes to old SolarWinds. It's kind of their meat and taters, if you get the idea, right? It's the thing that really makes them popular. If you have that, you need to go update that thing ASAP. What I find interesting is that there's these 3 CVEs for this, right? So we've got 2023 35182, we got 35185, and 35187. These have all, from Trend Micro, been deemed critical with a 9.8 CVSS score. That is bad, ladies and gentlemen. That is bad. What's funny, though, is that SolarWinds, they did their own on it, and they only give it an 8.8.
Oh, of course.
It's not as bad as all that. It kind of is, though.
Let's talk about how we get to that rating, though, because SolarWinds, they're a bit of a victim of their own success, right? So their original product was an at-a-glance view of your network. So the SolarWinds Orion product.
Yeah.
Yep. And you had a nice visual representation that was web-based. You could see all of your routers, your firewalls, your servers, and so on, and just see, are they up or are they down?
Right.
What bandwidth are they using? What's the CPU, disk utilization? Just a single pane of glass, at a glance, how's my network doing? And then over the years, they started adding more and more stuff. They added configuration management and backups. They added this one, access rights. We need to manage those, right? So here we go. We get a tool that does it. They added a bunch of tools that did everything a network or sysadmin would want to do. And it's really sensitive stuff. So people would create out-of-band management networks, right? So networks where your customers weren't on there, your production data wasn't moving across it. It was just for admins to manage the network. And that's what makes this so dangerous, is if somebody can do remote code execution on your out-of-band management network, that just, the tires fall off the wagon at that point, right, Ronnie?
Yeah, I mean, that's like having a backdoor literally into every part of your network when you have that out-of-bound management. So if you can get access there, it's pretty hefty in that sense. And software like this makes it easy for us to also, be able to manage everything. And that's the key, right? Is now they're like, hey, this software is great in what it does, but now it's been taken advantage of. And that 9.8, like you said,
Yeah.
It's not like, okay, we did a bad thing. It's like, no, this looks like it was all the way through. Yeah.
And because of how many people use this software and the importance of those organizations that do use it, say it with me, supply chain attacks. That's the nightmare scenario that comes into play. That's what the big problem was in 2020 when it came to this, and them having these horrible RCEs was they're so vested into these critical organizations for not just the United States, but really the world in a lot of ways, that if someone were to gain access to them through this, that's when real problems can start to arise. And that's why this is a really important thing for us to get patched.
Now, Don, have you used this ARM?
Yes.
I have not. Okay, so in that sense, what you were talking about in terms of the victim of their own success, right? They're already in these big networks like Daniel's talking about. And was this because they wanted to add this tool in before somebody else actually made a tool? And so they just kept extending themselves beyond what they were really good at doing, and like, let's get in there before this other XYZ company gets in and makes this better tool. And
maybe, I mean, there are some other companies that make tools that do this.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember one that has a weird name. But anyhow, if you do like ISO 27001 compliance or a SOC 2 report or whatever, access rights and review is a part of that. You have to show that you, at least once a year, review all your user accounts and the access they have and ensure they haven't been given anything they don't need, and the people that shouldn't have access have had that removed. Well, they also require you to monitor your server uptime and centralized logging and all that stuff. And those are all things that SolarWinds has deployed over the years. So they want to be a one-stop shop to say, we provide everything you need to be compliant. Now, where a tool like this is a target, if I'm an attacker and I get in, maybe I get root access on one device. I want root access on every device. A tool like ARM can give it to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that really opens it up. Now, the patch that fixes all of this was just released on October 18th, which was only a couple of weeks ago. If you have not rolled it out, like Daniel said, you absolutely do need to get that one rolled out. And I want to stick with the SolarWinds theme because this is a good transition into our next article, which comes to us from the folks over at securityweek.com. The headline is Cybersecurity Leaders Spooked by SEC Lawsuit Against SolarWinds CISO. Now, this time we are talking about what happened 3 years ago.
Right.
So what's happening today is they had some CVEs. Trend Micro, the researchers there found these vulnerabilities, handed them to SolarWinds. SolarWinds patched them. Trend Micro did responsible disclosure. The system's working the way that it's supposed to work. Except, did they come out and say this has been exploited in the wild or not? I haven't seen that yet. But if you go back to 3 years ago, there are people that believe that SolarWinds acted not in the due diligence,
not in good faith.
Not in good faith.
Yeah.
That's the best way to put it there. That SolarWinds has investors.
Yeah.
And so I believe they're publicly traded. And so they have investors, and so they fall under the oversight of the SEC. And the SEC is saying that they feel SolarWinds actively misinformed their investors.
Or just did not inform, right?
Yeah.
Like in some ways it was like a lie of omission, right?
Yeah. So that they did not come forward in good faith and disclose the actual status of what was going on to their investors, and that's fraud.
Yeah.
And so the SEC has filed a lawsuit. Now, I've brought up a concept a few times over the years we've done this podcast about the role of a CISO, and I have an extremely cynical view on this because
you mean the company alcoholic, right? Because they've not by choice.
So your CISO, that's Chief Information Security Officer.
Right.
So at the end of the day, all of your IT security falls under this person's purview. And so if something goes wrong, if ransomware spreads throughout your environment or hackers get in and get all of your PII or whatever, it's kind of like the CISO's duty to fall on their sword.
Yeah.
Right. And to get fired. If you're a company and, like Home Depot, remember when Home Depot had that huge breach, every credit card they ever touch, or Target, every credit card they ever touched. And did those companies go out of business?
No.
Did their sales even go down the next month?
Probably not.
No.
They processed the same amount of credit card transactions the very next day. Like, it didn't impact the company at all. But for PR's sake, they got to do something. Fire the CISO, or the CISO, right? So that's kind of a known entity. If you're a CISO out there, you know that's the case. You know, in our day job, I act as the CISO for our organization, and so
when are you getting fired?
Well, whenever we have a breach, I assume. So,
good job, not still being here, Don.
so I accept that, and I do everything I can to make sure that I can show we tried, we did our best to prevent it, and if something happens,
as you mentioned earlier, there is no try.
Only do. Do or do not. That's it.
So out of your own mouth, you have condemned yourself.
Well, no, so every time I say it, two things pop into my head. So one is the Yoda, right? So do or do not. There is no try, right? But the other one is there's a White Zombie song, and there's a woman talking in the background, and she says something like, "I never try anything. I just do it." And then later she's like, "Want to try me?" And well, innuendo.
Yeah.
Competing with Yoda,
right? Competing with Yoda.
So it gives me brain freeze. This is where I'm at. White Zombie and Star Wars.
That's it. They've come together. Critical mass has been attained.
So I have to show that I've done everything I can, and that I've empowered the team to do everything they can to protect the environment. Right. And if I've dropped the ball, then I should get blamed. Well, here we're taking that next step of an actual criminal complaint being filed against the CISO. Now it's not just you screwed up, you're fired. Now it's you screwed up.
Liability.
Let's talk about are you getting a financial fine? Are you going to jail and so on? And I watched with interest the Uber case. Remember with Uber where their CISO, they got hit, attacker stole all their PII, and the attacker said, pay us $100,000 or we're going to release this information. And the CISO said, how about this? How about we say you guys are consultants and I pay you $100,000 and you give us the report.
Yeah, you tested our security and found it wanting.
And that is misrepresentation. Like, that is a bold-faced lie.
Come on, man, it seems plausible.
And I forget what his sentence was. It was something like probation for 6 months or something. I mean, it was a slap on the wrist. It was next to nothing. So there's a lot of CISOs or just CISOs that are getting nervous at this point. That are saying, wait a minute, I always knew I could lose my job at a moment's notice for something completely.
Not going to worry about federal sanctions.
Because Daniel, you've said it. As a defender, you've got to protect against everything.
Everything.
But as an attacker,
one thing.
I just got to find the one thing you forgot.
so a CISO is already behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
And now to realize, like, wait a minute, the risk for this job is so much higher. It could be prison time.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to be a CISO at that point?
Nah, I'm good, bro.
Well, so let's say that this goes through and the guy gets found guilty at some point. Let's say it's just it's a financial thing, $100,000. I don't know what, at that point, can he get a job as a CISO again at another company?
Historically, right? That has not.
I mean, does that
really been a problem? Unless it was like pure negligent, just bad. Well,
but
he was not good at his job.
Yeah, but if he's found and like, okay, here's your financial fine for doing this, and you're fired from the company.
You mean if this gets heaped on top of it? Yeah, gotcha.
I think if you hire, and I'm assuming this would be a felony, right? Because we're talking about wire fraud.
Yeah, that's true.
You're a felon to be a
SEC.
If you hire a convicted felon as a CISO, that's
a problem.
I have to imagine this would end their career in cybersecurity.
Yeah,
he is going to work at someplace with a paper hat.
Yes, asking people if they want. Not that there's anything wrong with that job. That's an honorable profession.
Yeah. But he would be starting over.
It is a bit of a step down from chief officer.
It's a brave new world out there, and I think this is one we have to watch. That you do have to look at this through 2 lenses, though. So there's what he did in his technical role, which may well have been all he could do.
Yeah.
But then there's the actual fraud of misrepresenting data to the investors. So this may not have to do with technology at all.
If this is what is like pushing this these sanctions, and they find them guilty of that, obviously they absolutely did something wrong, right? It's not that I fell on my sword because we got breached, and really we did everything we could, and it's just a matter of time before that happens, and I'm okay with that. I'll go find another job somewhere else, and we'll just kind of play this 3-card Monte game of CISOs around these large organizations where oh no, brother, you colored outside the lines because you hid things. You didn't disclose everything. You were purposefully obfuscating the facts so that your investors didn't take a bigger hit than they might have, right? That's where the problem lies, not so much in the fact that they weren't unable to stop, the advanced persistent threats that are out there, but that they tried to cover it up. And that's where you go, oh, okay, now you're untrustworthy, and that's why you can't get a job, and that's why you're being convicted of a crime.
And there's going to be a whole new insurance industry, which is like the malpractice insurance that doctors have, but now for CISOs.
Yeah. Let's think positive on this, right? So positive. If your goal is to become a CISO, expect salaries to go up soon, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Because if you're going to take on that risk, doctors are highly paid because they do take on that risk, especially surgeons.
Yeah. And don't be a narcissist or a sociopath that thinks that they can do whatever they want and get away with it. Because if they find out,
and they may
work again.
All right, so that's definitely one we want to keep on our radar and see where that one's going to go. But let's move on to our last article of the day. This one made me chuckle. This one comes from the folks at Reuters, so this is legit news.
Oh, I thought that's why it made you chuckle, because it came from Reuters.
Alliance of 40 countries vow not to pay ransom to cybercriminals, U.S. says. So amalgamation of countries have gotten together, teamed up, and said, you know what? The way we can stop ransomware is to make it not profitable.
That's right.
That if people stop paying the ransoms, then ransomware is going to end. Now, I'll just start by saying, first off, that's 100% not true.
Yeah.
Right? Because we've had viruses and things for years where people were just doing it to screw around, like the Anna Kournikova virus. That wasn't so they could make money. It was just them screwing around. So it's not going to stop ransomware. But the other thing that I really want to highlight here is the countries are agreeing not to pay ransom. But that's the countries, the governments that are not going to pay these ransoms. Meanwhile, if you're private sector, if you're an individual, you're still out there. Right. And so these people are this is like when the UN says we're going to write a stern letter of, we don't approve of this action. And that's it. It's just a letter. So 40 countries are writing a letter to the ransomware attackers.
Yeah. Right. I'm going to sleep better. Very mean and stop. No more. We're not going to pay. It's like when your mom tells you to stand up to bullies and they'll back down. No, they usually just kick the crap out of you a little harder because now you're an easier target, right? Yeah. They're like, I'll make an example out of you. So I expect to see some ransomware demands go up to test the metal of this accord of which they've stuck.
Now, the one positive thing that I see coming out of this, it is a little bit more than writing a letter, right? Yeah. So let's get back to reality a bit. But I mean, mostly it's writing a letter, so total BS. But one thing they're doing is each of the 40 member countries that have signed on to this agreement have said, all right, when we see a ransomware attack and they post a wallet, a Bitcoin wallet or any cryptocurrency wallet ID, account number, whatever it's called, address. When they post a crypto wallet address, we will share that with the other 40 countries. Yeah. So everybody knows, don't send money to this address and freeze transactions to that address if possible, which is not always possible. That's positive. I hope that they share that. I mean, if they share it with everybody, including the public, to say, don't pay this address, you're still going to have some people that'll do it, but at least it's a start. So they are doing something, but it's just not much.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if they're also like, I don't know if it said it in the article or not because I don't remember, but are they bolstering their own security to be more robust against ransomware attacks? Because that tends to be the problem. Like if you don't allow them to crypto lock your stuff to begin with, you ain't got to worry about telling them yes or no. Yeah. It just doesn't happen. And then you're good. Or if you have like, okay, yeah, you crypto locked our stuff, but we got a great backup over here that you couldn't get your hands on because we separation of duties kind of idea. And back to business as usual. See you later. Thanks for playing. Like, are they taking those actual security steps so that they have more power in their hands to give them the proverbial middle finger? And then, that would be, that's what I want to hear coming out of, not just, we wrote them a stern letter and we've all, decided we're not going to pay. We don't negotiate with terrorists. That's great. But you also got to do the things so that their terrorism is less effective.
Yeah, so I hear about here's where I have this debate.
Yeah.
I was searching for it here.
Yeah.
There was a one of the car manufacturers got hit by ransomware this last week.
Yeah.
And so their service departments were shut down in several locations. And I can't remember which one it is, and I'm trying to find it. I'm not finding it, but because it blends in with all the other
there's
organizations.
so many others. Yeah.
Let me just pick one here at random. Here, a little known university, Stanford, got hit by ransomware.
Oh man, poor guys.
All right, so looking at Stanford, and I haven't researched that one at all, so I don't have any facts on it, but it could be that they have patched all of their machines fully. They've implemented anti-malware. They've got centralized logging. They have firewalls that do deep packet inspection. It could be that they have properly deployed every tool at their disposal, and yet the attackers managed to bypass that through the use of 0 days, or they phished an employee that was the weak link and managed to bypass some security or whatever. It could be that way, right? Or it could be that they were using unpaid student labor to implement the most mediocre security possible.
Which one do you think it is?
It's more likely case two, but let's think
Let's think the benefit of the doubt here.
Yeah. And so from that perspective, that's where I have a hard time saying, like, if we just patched everything, we wouldn't have to worry about ransomware anymore. Because
I don't hear me say that either. That is not the point I was trying to make. The point is like, it's most likely scenario 2. And right, I don't want it to just be, we're not going to pay. Cool, do that. Absolutely. And what else? Right? And what else are you going to do? Stop making it a trope that we get to laugh at you for being scenario 2 in Don's one or the other little world here, that whether or not they're either doing all the full, yes, because you can do everything possible and still get popped. But that's not normally what's happening. Right? It does happen, but it's not normally what's happening. So let's a both and, not a either or.
Yep. And go ahead, Ronnie.
No, I was going to say, so the end result or the effective result from this, right, would be what? The idea of just saying, okay, ransomware people, we're not going to pay you anymore. I mean, is that really any type of effective notion at all?
I think it would.
It's possible. Yes.
Let's go more aggressive, right?
Yeah.
This blocking wallet stuff is BS, right?
Yeah.
Because you have
Yeah,
mixers and things that are out there.
Yeah.
I have a hot take, and I've said this one before. This is not news to you, but I think Bitcoin should be illegal.
Oh yeah.
I think that it is simply a tool for fraud and crime, and
I mean, Pandora's out of the box at this point, though, right?
No.
You just come in with the government heavy hand.
If
you
they
start messing around with
made
Bitcoin, you're going to jail.
If they made anonymous cryptocurrency illegal, they could absolutely shut these systems down.
Yeah.
And if it becomes impossible to translate one currency into crypto and crypto back into another fiat currency, then it would shut it down.
Yeah.
That's really what's fueling this, is anonymous cash.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? That if it was the old days where they had to transfer money through bank accounts, whatever, that's
Right, there's all
traceable, and you
Swift
can roll it all
transactions.
back,
Yeah, right,
and so on. And it's not like that right now.
So because you can't subpoena the records that are where these transfers, it's hard to follow the money.
So instead of doing that, because apparently the governments are scared to do that, that they choose to make individual wallets illegal, and that's just not sustainable.
It's not, right, because you just make a new wallet, and
and we end up in a world where, like for me, I can't find this company that I know got hit by ransomware because so many other ones. We got Kansas court system, Toronto Public Library, British Library, Dallas County. I mean,
the list goes on.
This is me just on Google News looking at stuff that's happened in the last 2 weeks. The Quick Trip system, I don't even know what that is. DLSU, don't know who that is. I mean, just company after company after University of Michigan. These are big organizations.
So I'm just thinking, right? None of this is baked, right? I'm going off of Don's hot take here about making it illegal. I'm just thinking my way through this and trying to find where my logical errors occur. If I'm a ransomware gang, and since Pandora's box is open when it comes to the creation of a cryptocurrency and how that works, I can create my own cryptocurrency right now if I wanted to.
Yes.
Right? In theory. What would still stop me from saying, well, I have my own crypto and I want you, like, I guess the value in it, right? Like it would have no value.
Sure.
That's
can't
how
translate
I would have to,
something they can
it would have
buy,
to have some sort of value. Gotcha.
Yep. And a lot of these are trumped up values because people know they can convert currency,
Right.
so they can dump a bunch of, basically like money laundering, dump a bunch of real currency in there.
Yeah.
And what's supposed to combat this, and I don't want to turn this into a crypto podcast or anything, but are KYC laws, right? Are you familiar with those?
I am not.
KYC, know your customer.
Yep.
Right? So U.S. banks,
Gotcha.
in order for them to do any financial transaction, they have to know their customer. These are anti-money laundering laws. And in Bitcoin, you specifically don't know your customer, right?
That's the idea.
It's not truly anonymous, but you don't know who's attached to that wallet.
It's anonymous enough.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the KYC laws, they don't apply though in cryptocurrency, and that's where we end up in this world.
I got to learn more about cryptocurrency because I'm like, I never embraced it. I'm not going to use it. Like at this point, it's not like a thing where I'm like, well, you got to pay in crypto. You know, I'm not buying anything crypto. I'm not trading crypto. I'm not using crypto. But it's definitely something I should, and you as well, learn a little more about crypto, understand it, because it's definitely becoming. If you are working in the enterprise world and you get hit with ransomware, you're going to need to learn a little bit about crypto and how that works. And hopefully through the dissemination of knowledge, we can figure out how we can, keep ourselves safe.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, it's a dangerous world out there. Stay safe and
quit bringing kerosene to the dumpster fire party.
There we go. All right. Well, as we wind this one down, let me just remind everybody that if you're bored and you want to learn more about stuff, go to acilearning.com. In fact, if you go to our website, technado.com, you'll see a Sponsored by IT Pro link at the top right. You can click that. That'll take you into ACI Learning, where you can sign up for an IT Pro membership. You can pursue certifications from companies like Microsoft, Cisco, CompTIA, and just general skills training. Daniel, you just did a series on OWASP Top 10 that's going to launch soon.
Yes, right? I did all the QA yesterday. I think there was only one thing that needed to be fixed, so I expect that out quite soon.
Yep.
Nice.
So Daniel and Justin on camera having a great time learning about security. Definitely stuff that you should be aware of, and I encourage you to check out. And if you're watching us on YouTube, in fact, if you're not watching us on YouTube, go over to YouTube, like and subscribe to the channel. We have some really neat stuff coming down the line. November is going to be a little quiet for us, right? So we had our cybersecurity awareness month in October. November gets a little bit quiet. And in December, we're going to start our 12 days of IT where we got some giveaways. I have been on a waiting list for a number of products for like 7 months.
Oh,
like
really?
I've been planning this for a while, so we want to have some really cool prizes.
Nice.
To be able to give out. So definitely check that out. But if you
we got a cap on the money when it comes to the prizes, that because they always source out to us. What do you think would make a good gift?
You guys have a cap, yes.
Oh, okay. Not done.
Not
I did not follow the cap.
Sky's the limit.
Says caps do not apply.
PS5 from Don was
that would have been cheaper.
Oh no! What?
Nice.
Holy crap!
I can't promise anything right now because it's all like I've been on a waiting list
for this
and I'm supposed to have it in time for the giveaway, but if I don't get it in time, I
want to win whatever the hell
I
this
know.
is.
It's sweet. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be a wrap for this week. Be sure to tune back in next week because technology never sleeps and the world's going to hell in a handbasket. We're going to report on it on Technado next week. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you then.